Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got some really fascinating source material in front of us today. It details a pretty intense cognitive training program, essentially how you can take the simple feeling of your breath and transform it into this, well, brilliant and stable mental sign, and use that sign to achieve a state of total mental absorption, which the texts call shana. So our mission is to really map out this whole pathway, start to finish, based on these texts.
Yeah, and we're focusing specifically on anapanasati, which is mindfulness of breathing. The texts, they make it clear right from the start that while there are 40 different subjects you could use for this kind of concentration practice, samathatha, well, anapanasati is the one they usually recommend if you're not sure where to begin. It's seen as very effective, accessible for most people.
Okay, so it's the go-to starting point. Let's get into the actual how-to then. The traditional setup instructions, they sound almost picturesque. Finding a quiet spot forest, under a tree, an empty room, sitting cross-legged, keeping your body upright, and establishing mindfulness. Once you're settled, what's the absolute core physical instruction?
It's very specific and honestly a bit counterintuitive for many people at first. The main instruction is just mindfully breathe in, mindfully breathe out.
Yeah.
Simple, right? But here's the catch, the critical part, where you place your attention. It must be fixed only where the breath makes contact with the body. So either the very top of the upper lip or maybe around the entrance of the nostrils.
Ah, okay. So you don't follow it, like track the air going into your lungs or back out.
Absolutely not. That's a common mistake.
Yeah.
The moment your mind starts following the breath beyond that specific external point, your concentration is broken. You have to keep it right there at the point of contact.
That fixed point is really emphasized then. But if the feeling is, say, air moving on the lip, what's the mental object? Is it the feeling itself, like coolness or pressure?
No, and this is a really crucial distinction. It's where people often get tripped up. The object isn't the raw physical sensation of the air. It's the concept of the breath, just the simple knowing, the awareness that breathing is happening. And to really perfect focusing on this concept, the sources are very explicit about what you need to actively ignore.
Ignore, you mean like ignoring the temperature of the air or whether it feels rough or smooth, those kinds of details.
Precisely. You deliberately disregard what the text call the individual characteristics. Those are the tangible qualities linked to the four elements, earth, water, fire, air, that might be present in the breath sensation. You're not analyzing the air. You're using the simple concept of in and out to calm the mind. And just as importantly, you also ignore the general characteristics. This means you don't start thinking in-out impermanent or in-out suffering or non-self.
Right, because that's a different kind of practice.
Exactly. That's insight meditation vipassana. Right now, the goal is just pure, undisturbed calm, single-pointed focus.
Okay. But what if you sit down, you try to focus on this concept at the lip or nostrils, and your mind is just all over the place, too restless? The texts offer something for that, don't they?
They do. There's a practical technique suggested, often attributed to the Visuddhimagga, counting the breaths. But you only count after the full cycle is complete. So breathe in, breathe out, then mentally note 1, in, out, 2.
Is there a specific number to count to?
Yeah, there's a range. You count up to at least 5, but no more than 10. Counting to 8 is often suggested as a nice middle ground, and it can serve as a subtle reminder of the Noble Eightfold Path. But remember, the counting is just a tool, a kind of mental scaffolding. The aim is to use it only until your mind settles down enough that you can sustain that calm awareness of the conceptual breath itself continuously for, say, at least half an hour.
All right, so let's say you've managed that. You've got that initial stable focus for a decent period. What's next? The training then moves into 4 specific stages, right, to deepen the concentration.
That's right. The Buddha outlined these 4 systematic stages. The first 2 are about becoming aware of the breath's duration. Stage 1 is knowing when you're breathing in a long breath or breathing out a long breath. Stage 2 is similar, knowing when you're breathing in or out a short breath.
And long or short here means physical length or time.
Time, duration. And crucially, it's subjective. You, the meditator, have to decide based on your own experience what counts as long or short in that moment. There's no stopwatch involved. It's about refining your awareness of the breath's temporal quality without judging it.
Okay, so just noticing the duration, then stage 3. Experiencing the whole breath body I'll breathe in, and the same for breathing out. That sounds like a significant step up.
It is. It's a key development. Before this, your awareness might have been a bit patchy, maybe just catching parts of the breath. Now, the goal is to maintain continuous awareness of the entire conceptual breath, right from its very beginning through the middle to its very end. As it passes that fixed awareness, point the lip or nostril area, you're aiming to saturate the whole duration of each in-breath and out-breath with mindfulness.
Covering the whole span. And then stage 4. Calming the breath body, I will breathe in and out.
What?
How does that work without, consciously trying to breathe more slowly or shallowly? You said not to interfere.
Right. It's subtle. You aren't making the breath calm through physical effort because that would just stir things up, introduce agitation. Instead, you simply set the intention for the breath to become calm, and then you maintain that full, continuous awareness developed in stage 3. The sources are clear. Doing anything else, like actively controlling your diaphragm, breaks the concentration. The calming happens naturally as the mind itself becomes more settled and refined.
That leads perfectly into what sounds like a really challenging point. The texts mention that right around this stage, often before the signs of deep concentration appear, the breath can become incredibly fine, super subtle. So subtle that it might feel like it's stopped altogether. That must feel quite alarming.
Oh, it's a classic hurdle,
Mm.
a major test. Many people do panic here. They think, I've lost it, or I'm not breathing, and they try to force a deeper breath, but that just undoes all the careful calming work from stage 4.
So what's the instruction then? What do you do?
You stay put. Keep your awareness absolutely fixed right where you last noticed the breath, even if nothing seems to be happening there now. And you wait, calmly. The texts offer reassurance. Only very specific types of people actually stop breathing, like someone who's died, or someone in the 4th jhana, for example. Since you're unlikely to be in either of those categories at this point, you are still breathing. It's just that your mindfulness, your perception, hasn't become sensitive enough yet to detect the very fine breath. You have to trust the process, hold your ground mentally, and not try to force anything.
And if you manage to hold that steady, calm awareness right there, despite the feeling of nothing happening, what comes next?
That's when the nimitta typically arises. The mental sign, the signal that concentration is really deepening. And because it's generated by your own perception, it can look wildly different from person to person.
What kind of things do people experience?
Oh, the text lists quite a variety. It could be something pure and gentle, like fine cotton wool, or maybe a feeling like moving air or a draft. For others, it might be a light, maybe bright like Venus, the morning star. Or it could appear like a gem, a ruby, or a pearl. Sometimes it's even more unusual images, like a strand of rope, a wreath of flowers, a puff of smoke, even a spider web, a lotus, the moon, or the sun. It really varies.
Okay, so a huge range of possibilities.
Right.
But the sources categorize these signs into 2 main types, don't they? An initial sign and then a more refined one.
Exactly. First, you usually encounter what's called the Ugaha Nimitta. That translates roughly as the taken up sign or learning sign. This one is often described as being somewhat dull, maybe unclear or opaque, perhaps unstable, like the cotton wool example, or maybe a ruby that isn't sparkling.
And the goal is to get past that.
Yes. As concentration strengthens further, this initial sign transforms into the Panibhaga Nimitta, the counterpart sign. This is the one you're aiming for. It's described as bright, brilliant, clear, stable, and radiant, like clear ice or perfectly clear glass or that ruby now sparkling intensely. This brilliant counterpart sign becomes the new object of meditation for deeper states.
Wow. Okay, so shifting attention from the concept of the breath, which you've been working on for ages, to this internally generated brilliant light or image, that sounds incredibly delicate. What are the rules for making that switch?
Extremely delicate. And there are 2 absolute don'ts. First, when the nimitta first appears, maybe flickering a bit, don't immediately jump your attention onto it. Don't grasp at it mentally. If you do, it'll likely disappear straight away. You need to let it stabilize. Second, don't play with it. Don't try to change its shape or color or brightness intentionally. Just observe it.
So you wait. Until when? How do you know it's time to shift focus?
You wait until the nimitta becomes stable, appearing consistently in the same area where your breath awareness was focused at the nostrils or lip, and it feels like it has essentially become the breath or replaced it. It should feel natural, like the breath awareness has seamlessly merged into this bright sign.
The sign becomes the new focus point, the new reality for your attention.
Exactly. Once your mind is firmly and seamlessly fixed on that bright, clear Panibhaga nimitta, that sign is now your object. And it's the object that allows you to reach both access concentration, which is like the threshold just before absorption, and then absorption concentration, jhana itself.
Okay, let's talk about that threshold state, access concentration. You mentioned it's close to jhana, but also where meditators might slip into something called pavaga states. What is that exactly?
Right. Pavaga is basically the passive underlying mind stream, kind of the mind's resting state when it's not actively processing sense input or thinking thoughts. When you're in access concentration, the nimitta might become very peaceful, very subtle, and your ordinary thinking stops. It's easy to mistake this dip into the passive pavaga stream for some kind of final attainment, or just think everything stopped. To push through that, to get into true, stable absorption, jhana, the texts really hammer home the need to balance what they call the five controlling faculties, the panchindriya.
Of five controlling faculties, could these sound important, like the control panel for the mind at this stage?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They steer the mind and keep it on track. The first pair you need to balance is faith, sada, and wisdom, panya, or understanding. Faith here means confidence. Confidence in the Buddha's teachings, the path, the effectiveness of the meditation itself. Wisdom is your ability to discern, to understand clearly.
What happens if they're out of balance?
Well, if you have too much faith without enough wisdom, the texts warn you might become sort of blindly devotional. Maybe start respecting things that aren't really central to the path, like minor deities or practices outside the core teachings. But if you have too much wisdom and not enough faith, you can become overly critical, maybe cynical. You end up just analyzing everything intellectually without ever actually settling down to doing the practice. You get stuck judging instead of meditating.
Okay, so faith and wisdom need to be in harmony. What's the next pair?
The next pair is effort, virya, and concentration, samadhi. Too much effort, trying too hard, leads to restlessness, agitation, striving. Your mind gets tense. But too much concentration without sufficient effort to keep the mind bright and alert leads to sluggishness, dullness, a kind of mental laziness. You might just drift off.
Like pressing the gas pedal too hard or letting your foot off completely? You need that steady cruising speed.
Exactly. A perfect balance is required.
So you've got faith, wisdom, and effort concentration. That's four. What's the fifth faculty, the one that manages all this balancing?
That's mindfulness, sati. Mindfulness is presented as essential in all circumstances here. It's the overseer, the regulator. It watches the other faculties, ensuring that balance is maintained. If faith starts to overshadow wisdom, mindfulness notices and helps correct it. If effort flags and concentration becomes too dull, mindfulness energizes. It acts as a refuge, protecting the mind, and crucially, keeping that brilliant panibhaganamitta from being lost. And because jhana is fundamentally a state of deep concentration, the texts do note that for this specific practice, samatha, having quite strong faith is actually very helpful. It fuels the necessary concentration.
Okay, so balancing these five is key to moving from access concentration into actual jhana. But the sources mention another set of factors to balance right at this point, too. The 7 factors of enlightenment.
Yes, it gets even more fine-tuned here. These 7 factors also need to be managed skillfully, specifically for dealing with hindrances that might arise even when you're focused on the nimitta. If your mind starts to sink, feeling dull or lazy, maybe losing the brightness of the nimitta, you need to consciously arouse energy. You do this by cultivating the specific factors of investigation of phenomena, effort, and joy. These are activating, uplifting qualities.
And if the opposite happens, if the mind gets too agitated or restless?
Then you do the reverse. You need to calm the mind down by cultivating tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. These factors soothe and stabilize. It's like having specific tools to apply depending on whether the mind needs energizing or settling down at that critical juncture.
It sounds incredibly precise. So by keeping the 5 faculties balanced, skillfully applying the enlightenment factors as needed, and maintaining unbroken focus on that bright panibhaga nimitta, you finally enter the first jhana. What defines that state?
It's defined by the simultaneous presence of 5 specific mental factors. These 5 together are the first jhana. They are applied thought, vitakka, sustained thought, vikara, joy, piti, bliss, sukha, and one-pointedness, kagate. The mind is completely absorbed in the nimitta, unified with it. This state can often be maintained for hours once established. Applied thought directs the mind onto the nimitta, like initially placing it there. Sustained thought keeps it anchored, examining it. Joy is this sense of rapture or intense interest, and bliss is a deep, pleasant feeling pervading the body and mind. And one-pointedness means the mind is totally unified with its object.
You mentioned joy and bliss, which sound wonderful, but the texts describe applied and sustained thought as making the first jhana somewhat gross. Why is that? Aren't they needed?
They are needed to attain the first jhana, but they still involve a subtle level of mental activity, of movement. Vitakka, applied thought, is like striking a bell. Vikara, sustained thought, is like the lingering vibration or examination of the sound. There's still a directing and anchoring function happening. Compared to the utter stillness of the higher jhanas, this initial mental activity is considered grosser, less refined. The ultimate aim is absolute stillness.
Which implies you don't just stay in the first jhana, but there's a strong warning about trying to move up too quickly, right? Something about mastery.
A very strong warning, yes. Mentioned in texts like the Pāpatayagāvi Sutta. You absolutely must master the first jhana before even thinking about aiming for the second. This mastery is called Vasubhava, and it's defined by 5 specific skills.
What are those 5 masteries?
Okay, you need to be able, 1, to advert to the jhana factors, meaning you can emerge and immediately know these 5 factors were present. 2, to enter the jhana whenever you want without difficulty. 3, to resolve beforehand to stay in the jhana for a specific duration, like for 1 hour. 4, to emerge from the jhana exactly at that predetermined time. And 5, to review the factors again immediately after emerging. Without this level of control, trying to progress is apparently unstable and likely to fail.
Total control. Okay, assuming you achieve that mastery of the first jhana, how do you then move to the second?
The method is quite deliberate. You emerge from the first jhana and then you reflect on its faults. Specifically, you contemplate how the presence of applied and sustained thought makes it relatively gross, still disturbed by that subtle mental activity. And you reflect on the peace and advantage of the second jhana, which lacks them.
So by seeing the problem with the current state, the mind lets go of those factors.
Exactly. By focusing on the relative disturbance, applied and sustained thought cease. And you naturally enter the second jhana. The second jhana then only has 3 factors: joy, bliss, and one-pointedness. It's more peaceful because that initial thinking process is gone.
And the process repeats for the higher jhanas.
Yes. To reach the third jhana, you emerge from the second and reflect on the grossness of joy. Joy is seen as a kind of excitation, even though it's pleasant. By seeing its relative disturbance compared to calm bliss, joy fades away. You enter the third jhana, which possesses only bliss, sukha, and one-pointedness, ekaggata.
Even bliss eventually goes for the fourth jhana.
That's the final step in this sequence. You emerge from the third jhana and reflect that even the deep pleasantness of bliss is still a subtle feeling, less peaceful than pure neutrality. Bliss fades, and you attain the fourth jhana. This state has only 2 factors: pure equanimity, upekkha, utter neutrality and balance, and one-pointedness, ekaggata. And it's in this state of profound stillness and unification that the breath actually ceases completely. This confirms the completion of that earlier training instruction, calming the breath body. The physical manifestation fully reflects the mental calm.
Wow, that is quite a journey we've just mapped out. From just noticing the breath at your nostril, through counting, through stages of awareness, encountering these varied mental signs, the nimitta, then refining that sign into something brilliant, learning to balance all those mental faculties, faith, wisdom, effort, concentration, mindfulness, and using that balanced state to systematically ascend through these 4 levels of absorption, shedding mental factors at each stage until you reach utter stillness and the breath stops.
It's incredibly systematic. The transformation from a basic physical concept into this radiant, stable mental light, the Paññapagga nimitta, and then using that as the basis for profound states of unification, it's a detailed path.
Yeah, the details really make it understanding the difference between the nimitta types, the crucial balancing acts required, knowing about that critical point where the breath seems to stop. That's the deep dive.
And the outcome of all that rigorous training is significant. Once you've achieved a mastery of the fourth jhana, you possess this foundation of incredibly bright, stable, powerful concentration. That mental light is ready.
Ready for what, though? The sources seem to indicate that reaching this point, this mastery of the fourth jhana, puts the meditator at a crossroads.
It does. With this powerful, refined concentration firmly established, you essentially have a choice. You can take this highly focused, stable mind and turn it towards vipassana insight meditation. Use that powerful lens to investigate the nature of reality, see things with profound clarity. Or you could choose to continue developing concentration, samatha, even further, perhaps using other meditation subjects like the color discs known as kasiyas to potentially reach even higher states or refine the existing ones.
A clear fork in the road. So the final thought we want to leave you with after exploring this whole path to the fourth jhana is this. If you had achieved this state, this radiant, mastered concentration, which path would you choose next? Would you turn towards insight or continue deepening the power of calm?